Hello and welcome to another Album of Record podcast, the first of 2025. I'm Craig Lyndall, joined as always by Andrew. How's it going, Andrew?
Going pretty good, Craig. I, of course, enjoyed a little time off. Spent a little family time and had some time off of work and, really enjoyed that. But I definitely missed the podcast and I'm pretty excited to get back to it today. But, last time I was dealing with a miserable cold and I have 95% recovered from that. But now today I am got a sore back, sore shoulders from shoveling snow, which I'm less than excited about. So I'm still not 100% physically for the podcast.
Yeah, but tell everybody, how many inches of snow did you have, Andrew?
It was like 3 inches.
Oh yeah, 3 inches of snow. I think all the sympathy just went straight out the window. So this episode, we're going to talk about the records or maybe records that we're anticipating hearing in 2025 that we're most looking forward to. Basically, we're just stealing the ridiculous list that Stereo Gum made and talking about the ones that we want to talk about. So you should definitely go check out the 1,000 or so things that are listed at Stereo Gum. But this is also that weird time of year for guys like you and me because we work really hard to keep tabs on new music every single year. But this dead period where 2024 is over, but 2025, it's not like we've got a bunch of stuff that dropped 1-1. And so what do you listen to? Do you go back to really old stuff? Do you listen to your favorite stuff from 2024? It's not a true existential crisis, but it's a mini existential crisis trying to figure out what to listen to this time of year.
Yeah, I'm totally in the same boat. It's like a weird thing because I think, as through the years, as I've spent like so much time worrying about my list for that year, I've really become a person that really mostly listens to music of the year that we're in, more so than somebody who like goes back. Like, if I'm going to be perfectly frank, like this year, now that it's 2025, I don't know how many of the top 10 from 2024 I'm going to listen to because that was 2024 problems and now I'm on to 2025 problems. But, there's always a couple things that get carried along for the ride. And I do think there's actually a good amount of 2024 music that I want to still listen to. But to answer your question, like, right now, I tend to use this time to go back and listen to a lot of 90s music. This is my period to really listen to all the grunge albums again. Like, I'll go through all my Alice in Chains albums, all my Soundgarden, all that kind of stuff until we start to get some new stuff to trickle in. And that's always the fun part of the game is like, what's going to be the first record that you and I are both like totally stoked about and excited to talk about. Like, we tend to not know when that's going to happen.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you. So during the year when we're trying to listen to all the new things, I'm listening to full albums a lot. So this time of year, my favorite thing on Spotify is to grab a song and start song radio and then just see what pops up.
That's a good idea. Yeah, I like that.
And so the other day, I can't remember what I even started the playlist with, but all of a sudden I was listening to Luna from Smashing Pumpkins' Siamese Dream. And it's like, I haven't listened to that in a long time. And then all of a sudden I'm listening to Siamese Dream. And so this time of year, it's just kind of the random walk through the music collection, kind of letting it come to me.
I think that's a good idea. I think I'm going to listen to Siamese Dream on the way to work tomorrow. I think you just inspired me. It is. It's
the
actually
second
been
half
a while
of that
since
record is just so underrated, I think,
Yes,
is what I want to say. It's so front loaded with the radio singles, but the second half of that album does not quit at all.
Yeah.
But it doesn't get the same acclaim as the first half.
I think like the first half is like, you got to remember this album came out in
94, 3.
It's earlier than that. And I was going to say 92, maybe even.
I think it was 93 because I think Gish came out in 91 or 92.
Okay. This is, prime era, though, of heavy or aggressive alternative music. And like those type of songs were all in the front half of that album. And I think that's what people latched onto. But I think, if you really want to dive deep into some of the more expansive things, like the crazy mind of Billy Corgan at that time, the super creative stuff, like that all happens mostly in the second half of the album. So there's a little bit there for everybody.
Yeah, I think you're right. That album ends with Luna, and it really does. I mean, you've got Silverfuck, and you've got some heavy stuff in the second half too, but it gets kind of art rocky, and
Yes,
really
very much
he
so.
lets a lot
Very
of the
much
stuff
so.
breathe in the second half of that record. But we're not here to talk about Smashing Pumpkins today. They released a record in 2024. I don't think they're on the list for 2025.
Unlikely for them to make this list.
So where do you want to start? I mean, you kind of put a sub list together. I think
let's just take turns. Let's just go back and forth and jump around and talk about whatever we feel like talking about. I'm going to save some of my probably more favorite things to talk about.
Actually,
a little bit later.
I'm gonna steal it, and I'm gonna force you to talk about the first one.
Okay.
I don't know if you guys can guess, but I think Zach Bryan's going to release something in 2025.
Yes, that's a good one. That's a good one to start with.
The guy who never leaves a 6-month period without releasing something.
He is on the list. I would not be surprised for us to get another Zach Bryan album. I mean, I don't know if you follow him on Instagram, Craig, but like he is like every day just posting stories of him working out new songs, new ideas. I mean, he is a prolific writer. He seems to never not have a guitar with him. I mean, he just literally has a guitar in his hands at all times. And it's just making music, so it's in his blood. That's what he's going to do. I always feel like there's something admirable about it, something that is even respectable about it, but you do always run a risk. But these artists that are like uber prolific, who put out multiple albums a year or even just one album a year, you do sometimes run into this thing where like you're not giving people enough room to really let these albums fester and breathe and sit with you for a while. And as a result, they sort of start to become disposable, because when you write that quickly, it gives them a disposable feel. Like, well, we're done with that album, it's on to the next one. You know what I mean?
You and I talked about this a lot with Cloud Nothings during the pandemic, where he was releasing a song a week.
Yeah, thereabouts. I mean, it was crazy.
We love Cloud Nothings, and some of the stuff that they were putting together was absolutely phenomenal, but it was impossible to really digest it, to make sense of it. The human brain has a capacity, and you and I specifically have been trained 40 years, 35 years now, to deal with records and release dates and windows and all these kinds of different things. And when somebody defies that and turns themselves into a musical blogger, it's really hard for us mere mortals to stay with it.
I don't mean to put you on the spot, because I don't know if you're still a subscriber or not, but Cloud Nothings are still putting out one song a month as a part of their Bandcamp subscription service or whatever. It would be a fun project sometime. Maybe I'll do it when I'm bored, to go through and pick like my favorite 10 songs and try to sequence it and make an album, like my own personal album.
I think that'd be really fun.
Cloud Nothing subscriber songs. So that could be a project for us to work on, which may or may not be interesting to people listening right now. But we just come up with a random idea on the spot in the middle of recording a podcast. But I think it could be a fun project to see like how your album differs from my album.
No, see, and I don't want to take it on. I would do it collaboratively. Okay. I'm terrified of trying to do it all by myself. But I always need you to provide the first filter, much like you did on this list today.
Yeah.
But, no, you're so much better at taking the giant amount of data and shrinking it down a little bit. You listen to a little bit more than I do. I think I'm still a subscriber, but because it's Bandcamp and because I never log in, I bet I haven't listened to one in 2 years.
So I listen to them every month. They come out. It's usually the first of the month. I listen to it, and like some of them are absolute bangers, like legit, like they're like really good songs. Some of them he's in a more just like, you can tell it's like stream of consciousness kind of writing, it's just like what do I see over there? There's a pencil on a desk. Let me write a song called Pencil on a Desk, like that kind of thing. But yeah, some of
But
it's really
sometimes
good.
that turns into running through the campus or whatever,
That's right. Which is great songs. Anyways, yeah. So Zach Bryan definitely has a new album coming out this year. So
all right, now I'll let you go for your first real selection.
okay. Well, I do want to talk about the Courtney Love album, and I have a couple reasons I want to talk about this. And I Craig, you had mentioned on multiple times that you really missed some of the like aggressive female vocalists from 2024. And it's funny that I'm leading off with Courtney Love, and I don't think she's as much your cup of tea as I am a unabashed Courtney Love
I'm
fan.
Actually not a big fan at all.
I was gonna say lover, Courtney Love lover, but that's like weird to say. But
I think that's her fan club name, Courtney Lovers.
Courtney Lovers, there we go. I am a Courtney lover. But yeah, I loved their albums, and I really loved Courtney Love's first solo album, America's Sweetheart. But what's interesting to me about this is that album came out in 2004. So that was 20 years ago. And it came out while she was still 40 years old, singing about, her, singing about drugs, singing about sex, singing about, you kind of read between the lines the fallout of what happened with Kurt and her relationship with celebrity and the whole gossip industry. And, all of that is in there. It's a highly personal album. And I just love how raw and visceral she was and how open, she literally cut herself open with these songs and just had these emotions like blur out, and it was really interesting. And then that was it. Like, she does not like this album. She has said in media that she doesn't feel good about this album. She doesn't like the way it was produced, and I would maybe agree with that a little bit. It is a little overproduced for the context of these songs, but she doesn't have any sort of love for this album. So I'm curious to see what a Courtney Love album in 2025, now that she's 60 years old, is going to sound like. And I don't know if she's sober. I don't know if, what her state of mind is. I don't know where she's at with anything, because she's been relatively quiet. There was a whole album that came out, but
when she did a 2-hour podcast interview with Rob Harvilla on 60 Songs to Explain the 90s, which was a shock. It was more like he would ask a question, she'd go on for 27 minutes, which is a lot. And not to say that she wasn't lucid, but I mean, she just takes over a microphone. It's what she does.
Sure. Absolutely. So, I just think it's interesting that we're getting a new Courtney Love album. And like I said, now that she's 60 years old, and I'm curious what it's going to sound like, where her headspace is. I find it all interesting. So I don't know if this is going to fill your lack of, good, hard hitting, aggressive female vocals this year, but it's one I'll be looking out for sure. So.
Yeah, probably not. I mean, we were so spoiled in 2023 with Brutus and Bully and Blondshell. There were just so many, for me, in my taste profile, there were just so many really great ones. And, I'm hoping. I didn't see Bully on the list or even Blondshell, but I think there's a real chance that those could end up having releases in 2025.
I would not be surprised if Bully does, because I follow Alicia on Instagram.
She had a single last year, which was phenomenal.
Yeah. And Atom Bomb, that was so good. She seems to be tinkering, I'll say. I don't know if she's actively writing an album, but it just seems from some of the stuff she posts like she's tinkering a little bit, and maybe something's in the works. So,
well, then let me take us down another path. You took us to Courtney Love. I'm going to take us to Wednesday, which is a female-fronted band, but all of a sudden, the lead guitar player, MJ Lenderman, has a spotlight probably bigger than what Wednesday has.
I would think so at this point. Wednesday is like super popular within like that like tight indie circle, but it's one of those ones where it's hard to gauge who is more universally popular. I would think it might be at this point Lenderman, but
Yeah, I think so too. But they're on the list, and I can't remember. You and I talked about this off on another channel. I can't remember if I heard it on a podcast or read it on a social media channel that there was speculation or at least people asking the question if MJ Lenderman is still going to be with the band because of his star turn and all that kind of stuff. And I don't think there's any fruit to you and me speculating on that, but it would be a real shame to me if that band didn't continue to work together, at least in as much as they've been that band for as long as they have.
I don't want that to turn into a Jason Isbell drive-by truckers situation. Like,
I don't either.
I just still to this day look, it's worked out really well for Jason Isbell. I promise you he has zero regrets, but I personally like drive-by truckers with Jason Isbell better than I like either of them individually. And I do like both of them individually. But anyways, I didn't mean to interrupt, but that thought just popped into my head where it was like part of it was, Isbell needed more creative room and he wasn't getting that in drive-by truckers. And I hope that like that's not a situation with Wednesday where Lenderman feels like he needs more creative room. And he seems to be a more integral part of Wednesday to me anyways. Like his playing is all over that last album that I would think he has it, but you never know.
Well, and on top of it, Carly Hartzman sang on the Lenderman solo record.
Yeah.
So these things there are no rules. I think a lot of fans and people online try and create drama or create rules where there are none. And whatever, if anything, all the success that MJ Lenderman's achieved gives him the freedom to do whatever the hell he wants, including making a record with Wednesday.
Yeah, for sure.
So, but yeah, this is an Asheville, North Carolina kind of southern indie rock band, but I don't know, twinges of shoegaze from time to time.
Yeah.
But they're just a really solid band, and they've had some of the best indie rock music over the last 5 years. So anytime they put something out, I'm definitely interested to hear more. So, I mean, how excited are you for a new Wednesday record, or is it kind of like wait and see?
I'm actually quite excited for it. I liked their last album quite a bit. So, to talk about like in terms of like how I felt about the MJ Lenderman album on its own, again, it's not that I disliked it. It just wasn't as in my wheelhouse. But the Wednesday aspect, when you put Lenderman inside of this band, I think for my taste, it works a little bit better in that sort of setting because I definitely remember like being impressed with the guitar playing in Wednesday before I even knew it was MJ Lenderman. So I actually knew that of MJ Lenderman before I knew like he was the guitarist in Wednesday. So it was one of those weird things that I didn't actually realize everybody else knew and I didn't. But yeah, so I'm excited.
All right, next.
I'm going to stick with the female vocalist sort of angle we're going with here. And I'm going to talk about Scowl, who has a new album coming out. This is probably a band most of our listeners are not familiar with or not super familiar with. But if you're at all in the hardcore or hardcore adjacent scene, you know this band. They put out their first album 3 years ago at this point. How Flowers Grow, and this was just
2021.
2021. Wow. Okay. Yeah. So that was 3 full years ago. But they got sort of swept up also in not even, I wouldn't say the wake of Turnstile. They sort of were doing it at the same time as Turnstile. They were getting picked up by Taco Bell. They had a Taco Bell ad. They were sort of, and this is something I'm not interested in talking about, but like some people get into the whole like, well, are they just like a part of the industry machine or a industry plant or all this and that? I don't care about that conversation that much. I don't find it particularly interesting. I just think they're a really great band who started out as a purely hardcore band, and they've put out EPs and singles since then, and they are morphing in an entirely different direction. And I'm just excited to hear this album and just see what direction they fully go. I mean, there are There's poppy elements. Their singer Kat, when she originally used to just mostly scream, and she's been singing and applying vocal melodies to some of the newer stuff, and it's an interesting direction. And I'm excited. This is like when we talked about like the bands with female singers that we really like. This is one of my favorites. So I'm excited to have a new Scowl album coming out this year.
Yeah, I really don't know much about this band. This is one that's off my radar.
Yeah.
So I'm going to grab one off your radar.
Cool.
I don't know if this is the final female vocalist of the day, but we front loaded with all our exciting female vocalists. Great Grandpa is a band that put out a record in 19 called Four of Arrows. I can't remember even how this one came across, but that record did a 7.4 on Pitchfork. It was really well reviewed. I loved the way it sounded. Specifically, the first two songs on that record, Dark Green Water and Digger, were just some of my favorite songs of that. Whatever year I discovered it, I don't think I discovered it in 2019. They've got one single out, and it's been 5 years. Who knows what this band is going to sound like 5 years later, but I'm really interested in hearing it just because I was so infatuated with at least those two songs, and to a lesser degree the entire record, and it was really well reviewed. Like, where have you been? What have you been up to? And what's it going to sound like?
That is true. Like, that's a band I have not thought about at all since until you mentioned it right before we started recording. Yeah, out of sight, out of mind, I guess.
It's been a long time.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm going to talk about two albums that I hope are coming out, but I'm not sure I believe are coming out in 2025.
These are my favorite list.
So the first one I'll talk about briefly, and the second one I'll talk about a little bit more in depth. But the briefly one is Queens of the Stone Age. I was stunned to see that name on this list because I have not heard anything about them having a new album this year. And the last thing I had heard from that band was the news of Josh Homme not being able to tour because he had to have some kind of emergency surgery. Now, we know his health has not been great over the last 6-7 years. He's maybe even longer than that. Like, I really think like it goes back to like, I think some of the stuff on Like Clockwork already, which was like 10 years ago, was dealing with some issues he was having with health. So anyways, through all this, I'm surprised to see their name on this list. I'm hopeful that it's actually going to come out. But, I also really just want Josh to focus on his health too. Like, just, I don't want him to, I know it's not my place to, I say this as though I'm a personal friend of his or something like that, but I just want him to take care of himself,
buddy.
Just take care of yourself,
So,
no,
I'm with you though. Like, I think the last time that I saw him where he looked really healthy to me was the benefit for Taylor Hawkins.
Yeah.
That the Foo Fighters did both in Wembley and in Los Angeles. And yeah, I've never seen Queens of the Stone Age live at this point. I think that at some point I would, if they're playing again and they're healthy, I will eventually see them at some festival or another.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping to do that because I'm not as big a Queens fan as you are, but a festival set from Queens of the Stone Age would be just all killer.
Absolutely. But yeah, I saw him open for Nine Inch Nails on one of their tours. That was a great opener for Nine Inch Nails. Who, by the way, Nine Inch Nails are on this list too, by the way. For the
let's go straight there.
The Tron Ares soundtrack, which I know absolutely nothing about. I don't even know what it means that they put the Nine Inch Nails name on this, because like, why is that any different than just what Trent Reznor and
Atticus Ross.
I was going to say Ross Atticus. I was like, I know that's not right. Atticus Ross. The stuff that they've been doing together, like, I don't even know what it means that this is Nine Inch Nails. Like, what makes that different?
Well, and I'm not going to be a complete hater because I love Nine Inch Nails, but you won't catch me caring about a Nine Inch Nails release until it makes sense to. Like, I will listen to it and I will listen. I will be interested when it comes out. but I'm not going to anticipate it. I'm not going to get excited about it. That band owes me nothing. They've been, one of the greatest bands of my lifetime. I've been to 2 of their shows and I love them forever. So anything else I get from that band as like true Nine Inch Nails material is bonus.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's well said. But that actually wasn't the second one I was going to talk about of
All
the
right.
ones that I hope are coming out, but I don't know if I believe are coming out. And the second one is the big one for me. That's Turnstile. That name was
Here
on.
goes Andrew talking about Turnstile again. We get it, Andrew. Turnstile.
And I'm not going to say anything particularly novel or interesting about this because we've talked about this ad nauseum already. But just the fact that, again, Stereo Gum put it on this list made me wonder, like, do they know something I don't? Because I Google maybe once a week Turnstile new album just to see if there's anything out there. And the only thing that ever comes up is like people on Reddit just asking the same questions I do. Like, where are they at in this process? Why haven't we heard anything? And right now, we don't even know who is playing guitar on this album, if they are even actively working on it. I have no idea what status this could even possibly be in, but it is still remarkable that in the hardcore world that a band would take this long. Now, to be fair, Turnstile themselves are technically a side project of Trapped Under Ice, and I know that Trapped Under Ice actually has some things in motion as well. I saw their guitarist was on the Hardlore podcast, and he actually said he's been working with, oh my goodness, wow, drawing a blank on the Trapped Under Ice singer. Anyways, oh my god, that's gonna kill me. But anyways, he's been talking to him about putting something together, and he's interested. So as far as I know, Brendan Yates from Turnstile is still technically in Trapped Under Ice.
Justice Trip.
Justice. Yep. And so, anyways, so there's all these things in motion. I have no idea what's going on with this. I don't even know how Turnstile is going to follow up Glow On, and I think that perhaps is part of the problem. But at the same time,
maybe it'd be good for them to go make another record somewhere else in a totally different brand name, band name.
I mean, it would be interesting if a Trapped Under Ice album came out first and then they toured on that. I don't know how many members of Turnstile are still in Trapped Under Ice. I don't know, but like I said, I'm pretty sure Brendan is still a technically an active member. But anyways,
yeah.
So that's on my list. I want it to happen.
Yeah, and just to double back on Stereo Gum and how they put their list together, it says, to be included in this list, an artist has to have offered an inkling that new music is on the way, or in some cases, their publicist gave Stereo Gum the scoop to include it. Even if nothing has been officially announced yet, maybe a band hinted at the project in an interview. Maybe they posted from the studio. Maybe they've been playing a bunch of new songs in concert. Maybe they teased an album on merch. Maybe they're contractually obligated to release something in 2025. If we couldn't find any breadcrumbs at all, we left it out.
Okay, so this is not just cope on their part. This is not copium. There needs to be actually something. So hey, who knows? Maybe it's in the water then. So anyways, those were my. I hope they happen, but I don't know if I believe they're going to happen in 2025.
All right, let's talk about Deafheaven.
All right, it's time.
Yeah, so you and I are both unabashed, ginormous fans of Deafheaven. They signed to a new label recently.
Roadrunner, right?
What's that?
Roadrunner, right?
I believe so, yes. And their last record was a massive departure from the kind of black metal shoegaze thing that they've normally been doing. It had a lot of clean vocals. It was definitely something that I found fascinating. And I loved listening to it, and I loved talking about it, and I never, ever, ever go back to it. And they seem to not play anything except one song live from that record, Mombasa. And even that one, they don't always play. I've seen some different festival sets where they haven't played a single thing since that record's been out, and it's their most recent release. So first of all, super excited no matter what they put out. But secondly, was that a one album experimentation, or are we going to get more clean vocals?
This is like what I'm just dying to talk about, because we have absolutely no clue what this album's going to sound like.
But they signed with Roadrunner. Of course they're going to go back to their black metal screaming roots, right?
Yeah, right. I mean, it would stand to reason, but there's other directions they could go, and Roadrunner does have some diversity in their lineup for sure. So, but I think what's interesting about it is, like, I have such a weird relationship with Infinite Granite, their last album. I very much loved that album. I'm sure it was in my top 5 that year, without a doubt. But man, I couldn't tell you the last time I actually listened to it. And I don't know. It's a weird thing when you have a band that you really love and you love that they did this album. Like, you love that they took this swing and they took a shot at it, and they didn't fail. I would not say this album was a failure. It, for what they did, it was very good, but it wasn't perfect. They didn't exactly nail it, and I don't really want them to keep trying that direction. So, and it feels weird because, like, when you're such a big fan of this band, like, you want them to be able to explore these boundaries. I mean, none of their albums sound the same, which is a testament again to their creativity. But this was a departure from the core elements of what Deafheaven is and what they do best. And I want them to rediscover some of those. I'm not even so much talking about the vocals. The vocals is the obvious thing, but musically, these songs on Infinite Granite, because they were trying to support a different vocal style, they became much more dream poppy and maybe shoegazy to a degree, but in a way that, like, these were almost like pop songs in a way. Like, they were trying to provide structure for a verse, chorus, verse type delivery of these vocals. And what I always like about Deafheaven are these massive 10-minute journeys, right? Like these songs that, like, start one place and take you somewhere else, and you get the heavy parts and then these dreamy bridges, and
almost like staccato ripping, mathy, like rip your soul out riff that just chunk, and then into the legato kind of musical symphonic metal kind of a thing, and then but without the need for the screaming. We were missing a lot of that, the drop, if you will, Deafheaven's version of the drop.
Yeah, right. Yeah, no, that's really well said, and that's exactly it. Like, it always creates within that journey these moments of, like, that tension, the push and pull, and, like, you get this sense of, like, absolute urgency. Like, this music is, like, leading you to the most important place that you are ever going to go, and you're on this, like, struggle to get to that point, and that's what I love, that tension. But it wasn't really there a whole lot on Infinite Granite. So I never want to talk too poorly of it, because, again, I think it's a really cool thing that they did, and it's an accomplishment in and of itself. But I am excited to see what they do next. I would be surprised if they made another version of Infinite Granite. I think we're going to see something much more akin to the Deafheaven that, I was going to say grew up with, but we didn't really grow up with it. But, like, you know what I mean? The musically with that we grew up with. I don't know. That's my guess what direction they're going to go, but we really don't know. I don't know. I'm kind of curious, like, your thoughts in general. Like, I assume you probably are pretty similar to me in terms of what you hope for, but I mean, what do you expect?
No, I really, and just to correct the record a little bit, it turns out that they were playing a lot of In Blur and Great Massive Color in the middle of their set, towards the end of 2024, before they stopped playing shows, presumably to go in the studio and record what we're going to hear in 2025. No, and it's funny because this is a record, Sunbather. This is a band that you and I jumped on board with Sunbather, like so many other people, in 2013, at the end of 2013, because it was really at list time where you and I finally jumped on the bandwagon with this record. And so it does feel like I grew up with this record. I've
Right.
had that record for over a decade now. And I've had this band that I've been obsessed with for over a decade now. Which feels like forever. Not many bands make 10 years worth of impact on me where they're not kind of fleeting examples of bands that I listen to and then I drop off of. And so I really do expect them to. I think there could be shades of Infinite Granite on this record, maybe a song, but I think we're going to get a lot more of the technical hardcore black metal, the kind of thing that really makes the crowd go crazy live. Because I think ultimately this is a band that, when you sign to a label like Roadrunner and business enters into it, but it's artistic as well. So let me get this all the way out. So
Yeah.
what are the songs that turn the crowd on when you're playing a festival set? And whatever the crowd gravitates toward and loses their mind the most, you're going to want to make more of that. And artistically, that's what you're going to be drawn to. And it's not selling out. It's being true to yourself and doing the things that you love that the crowd also loves the most. And I think that they'll probably find their way back to that because they're officially in that realm where they can play any metal festival in the world. If they do play a metal festival in the world, the metal festival is going to want them to play Sunbather. They're going to want them to play a song from Ordinary Corrupt Human Love. They're going to want what they want. And if you're a band of this tenure, of this stature, you're going to produce the kinds of things that made you famous to some degree. I think. I don't know.
Yeah. No, what would be really cool if they did from an artistic standpoint would be I like, how the end of Mombasa just like cuts off? Wouldn't it be cool if the new album started with an intro that like picked up where that cut is and then they like goes into something else of an intro, and so it's almost like Mombasa truly was like breaking out of whatever they needed to do with Infinite Granite, and like you're into that next album.
That would be the greatest thing ever for you, me, and like 10,000 other people in the world. Because that's another thing that you and I always talk about with Deafheaven is like in our world, they're one of the biggest bands in the world. And then you look at their Spotify numbers, they're niche, man. They're niche.
I think they are arguably the best band in the world. I truly do. Like, not always my favorite band in the world, but I can make an argument for them as the best band in the world. There is just nobody that does what they do as well as they do it. Like, I don't know. Like, so for me in my head canon, like they should be massive stars. Like this should be a huge rock band that could headline any festival, but instead, they are more relegated to the metal festivals and maybe some of the second stages or, or second billing, if you will.
So, which leads me to the next band. I'm going to use that as a perfect segue because I'm assuming you get the same thing when you and I are known in our personal lives as giant music people, and people talk, they see me, and if they're not talking about sports, they're talking about music, and they're asking me about music. And so quite often people will ask me, well, who's your favorite band? Which is what age group and what style favorite band. But the band that I think is the absolute best in the world right now, pound for pound, at the top of their game, is Manchester Orchestra. They're on this list. I have no idea what to expect. They released an EP last, which was really interesting. It was experimental. Maybe it disappointed some fans, but I loved it. And I don't know what they're planning. I know they're always working. I saw some little videos, snippets of them in the studio. So I know they're working, and I know they've been at the top of their game for 2 or 3 records now. So I cannot wait to hear what's next for them, even if it's more of the same, because what they're doing is like the best of their career.
So their last proper full-length album was Million Masks of God, which was the album that really got me back into them. So I would totally agree that this is a band still at their peak. What year did that come out? Was that 22?
No, it was 21, I think.
Was that 21 too? That's crazy how fast time can go on some of these things.
Yeah, because all of a sudden, a Black Mile to the Surface was the one that kind of reset the table and established them as
Right.
a different level. And that was 2017.
Jeez.
That's going to be 8 years ago in July.
So they're almost up ready for the 10-year anniversary tour of that, which is crazy. You know what? What's really exciting about a new Manchester Orchestra album, though, is them going on tour and taking Foxing with them.
Always. Foxing and Michigander.
Please do it, man.
Just run it back.
Please do it. Run it back. There's no reason to mess with that formula. Foxing and Manchester Orchestra go together so well. Just do it. Keep it going. Yeah, no, I mean, look, I'm with you. You know, they, not in terms of like Manchester Orchestra is not my personal favorite band in the world, but I'm really excited for more music. I will always pay attention to anything they put out because you just know it's going to be good. Like you would just be so stunned if they made a quote unquote bad album. Like I don't know how that.
What could they do?
Right. What does a bad Manchester Orchestra album even sound like? I have no clue.
Well, and because one of the things that I talked about earlier this year was when I saw them do the Cope tour and they played Cope from front to back, knowing where they went after Cope and going back and listening to Cope, I'm like, oh, this sounds a lot better than it did to me at the beginning and in the moment. And sometimes you got to know where the journey is leading them in order to understand where they've been. And so maybe that's also the Infinite Granite story.
And I don't want to derail this because I certainly don't think Foxing's going to put out an album in 2025. But I do think it's funny how much the self-titled album, which was both of our favorite album of 2024. I when you asked what have I been listening to on the break, really my answer is Foxing. I've just been going back and like listening to Albatross and Dealer, especially albums that.
And I gotta say, it shocks me, and we've talked about it, but I need to say this publicly.
Yeah,
it kind of shocks me that Dealer catches you as somebody who fell in love with the band. Right. But maybe that just speaks to you falling in love with the entire story of the band, too.
And it does. And there's just something about when I know what Dealer is about to do. Like, I know that they are going from Dealer to Nearer My God to Draw Down the Moon to this self-titled album. Like, that this is to me, that's, even though Albatross is their first album, I view that as like, Albatross is this like iconic underground indie album. It's in its own box. Like, that's the jumping off point. But Dealer is, to me, the first step in this linear journey that gets us there. And so I think it's so cool to go back and hear that and know what that band is about to do after this album. And it makes me appreciate Dealer so much more. I've told you this, but I went out and bought Dealer on vinyl. It should be here in a couple days. I'm excited to listen to it on my record player. Like, I really love that. So I think in the same way, like I could see where going back and listening to Manchester Orchestra's Cope could be like this like gateway into understanding, like, because sometimes it just changes the way you feel about it. If I just heard Dealer in that moment, I might have thought, oh, this is just going to be a sad droopy band, right? Like, or so, like you don't really understand what this band is capable of without that full context. So I have sort of the advantage, and more power to all the Foxing fans who were ride or die from day one, who were along for that journey. I just wasn't there. I didn't discover them until Nearer My God was out. So,
well, as you and I were talking about it, Dealer is it's Foxing's Pinkerton.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Yeah. I don't know how they feel about. I don't know if they dislike it as much as Rivers dislikes Pinkerton, but
I don't think they dislike it at all. I just meant as far as it got smashed. It got trashed publicly. It got trashed by influential reviewers on YouTube. And
it's funny that this band is on this like up and down trajectory with that too, because Near My God was almost universally loved, and then Draw Down the Moon comes out, and everybody's like, "Whoa, what is this?" And like that got panned too.
And I was so confused by that. How is it confusing to you that Draw Down the Moon would come from the band that gave you Near My God? Like, what is it that you expected them to make after Near My God?
Yeah, I have some suspicions, and I'll save this for our eventual Foxing like career retrospective episode. But I have some thoughts on that. So we'll
You
get to that
can't
later.
tease it that way. You got to at least give us the 30-second version.
The 30-second version is around that time there was a like certain sort of, I'm going to call it, for the lack of a better term, pop rock that was like movie, like this radio rock style. And I can't remember the name of track 2 on Draw Down the Moon.
I'll look it up.
The what right after 737 has like some elements of it that plants this seed in your head. And then there's a couple songs that are a little poppy on Draw Down the Moon that I think people equated with that movement, and it turned off your like traditional type boxing fan. That's
Go
my
Down
theory.
Together. Such a
Go Down
great
Together.
song.
Yeah. I love it, but I can, there's some poppiness or that radio rock element to it that some people might not like. But anyways,
And some people, it was so nonsensical, but some people made fun of the album cover too, because there's like a person with a sword and all that kind of stuff.
yeah.
I guess people didn't like the imagery.
It did have that Coachella radio rock thing going. Like even that album cover does have that element to it. So I sort of get it, but I love everything that band does. So
Yeah, me too. Yeah, we if nothing else, 2024 is the year that we became foxing acolytes.
yes, very much so.
All right. Go ahead.
Well, speaking of bands that I pretty much love everything they do, we got to talk about Deftones too, of course.
Yeah.
So, their last album was Ohms, which was an album you and I both loved and felt like that album was them trying some new things on it, even at their
but also
age.
the quote unquote return to form.
As every Deftones album is. It's my favorite thing. Like every Deftones album, you hear the well, this one's going to be really heavy. This is the return to form. And at this point, I don't even know what form, and I'm using air quotes for those just listening. Form. I don't know what Deftones form is. Like what are we returning to at this point? Like they've made so many albums, so many different styles and textures, and just different things they've tried to do throughout their career. And again, I don't know what this album's actually going to sound like, but I bet you I'm going to like it. I don't know what a bad Deftones album sounds like either.
So I can't remember where somebody got the Deftones to rank their own records and talk about
Seriously?
I think we've talked about this over the years.
Really?
Yeah, because you said, oh yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, it makes sense that one is there and whatever.
Okay.
I'm super excited for this record just because I follow Deftones on social media. I've seen pictures. For some reason, my Facebook algorithm thinks that and knowingly knows that I want to see Deftones things all the time. So when Chino was on tour with the side project Crosses,
3.
Yeah, Crosses. He was spotted coming in and out of the club by fans, and he's taking pictures, and he looks so healthy, and he's smiling, and you get this vibe around a band like Deftones who've been through some serious stuff, ups and downs, and death of a bandmate, and drugs, and all kinds of things. And so to see Chino just look, and maybe he's not, maybe it's all an act, but to see him and feel like he's just so healthy and so happy right now, I can't wait to hear, because it's a band of energy. And when that band has their energy, whether they're getting out frustration or anger or happiness or whatever they're getting out, they're an energy band. And I feel the positive vibes coming from Chino in these like public posts. So I just want to see that translated into the music. And we know this one's coming out. The music was done in April, and they announced their world tour in September. So you got to think that in those 5 months they got all the principal tracking done.
Yeah. I haven't though seen much talk from them about what this album is actually going to be like. I do remember reading one article and had some comments from Chino about it, but I don't even remember what he said about it musically. So, I'm an open book with it. It's like, it really doesn't matter much to me. I can't imagine that I'm not going to like it, to some degree, I'm with you. it's just awesome that, again, this band that you probably wouldn't expect. Like, look, we also have new albums from Korn and Limp Bizkit coming out this year. They were on the extended Stereo Gum list. I think it's kind of funny that in 2025, those three bands all supposedly have new albums out. But what's funniest of all is that Deftones is by far the most relevant to most fans, I would say, the most critically respected and critically anticipated band.
And they were the smallest of the three back in the time.
That's right. It was Korn and Limp Bizkit were these two huge bands, and Deftones was always just kind of there. And like through just being themselves and steadily just keep doing their thing over time, like they finally started to get some of the critical respect that I always thought they deserved from the beginning. And now at this point, I think when, in terms of, and I'm going to use this word like respect, that I know is a weird word to use because it's pretty subjective, like on how much somebody respects them. But just in the critical world, music critics don't care about new Korn or Limp Bizkit, but they definitely will care to some degree about a new Deftones album. And I, as somebody who truly just loves everything about Deftones, I'm obviously thrilled for them to be in this position now and that they're still relevant in our lives and in other people's lives and the rock world in general. Like, it makes me happy. Like, they so often, these bands like have these trajectories that don't work out the way we think they should. Like, you're like, man, in a just world, this band would have really made it. And Deftones is that like success story. They overcame some stuff and came out the other side and still going, and I love that.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. And just a little bit about Limp Bizkit. It's interesting how the years kind of softened me on them a little bit, because there was a time, especially after like Significant Other and Hot Dog Flavored Water and Fred being Fred, where I despised that band and I despised everything about them. And then Woodstock 99 happens, and I didn't really care so much personally, but it was kind of gross. And it didn't make me feel better about them as a band. But now all of a sudden, they're older men. They're on the festival circuit. I had to look it up. In August, they played a show where they opened with Break Stuff and closed with Break Stuff in the same show. And they played 17 songs.
Yeah.
Two of which were Break Stuff.
Yeah.
And but all of a sudden, like, I don't have the hatred for them that I did at a moment prior, and I wouldn't go out of my way probably to buy a ticket to see them. But if I had some friends going, I'd go check it out on a lark, and I wouldn't hate myself for it. But I was there at Ozfest in the Akron Rubber Bowl when he came out of a 2-foot story tall toilet, and I was like, this is just not what I'm about. And I didn't feel like I was in on the joke. It felt like a crass joke that I didn't want to be part of.
Yeah. And, Korn was a band that I was all in on through their first, for sure their first 4 albums. And Issues being their 4th album was like probably the one that I think started to change their trajectory a little bit. I still liked Issues quite a bit, but not everybody did. And then there was like Take a Look in the Mirror. There was another one that I see. This is how bad it is. I can't even remember all the Korn albums from that era, but that's a band that like I couldn't tell you. I don't know who's in Korn anymore. I couldn't tell you the last time Korn was actually relevant to my life in any like meaningful kind of way. And it's just funny how these things can pan out, because I was a huge Korn fan, particularly for their first 3 albums.
Well, you'll be happy to know that the current members are Jonathan Davis, Monkey Fieldy, Head, and some drummer named Ray Luzier.
Hey,
so it's most of the band.
It's actually pretty impressive that the core, because one of
the touring musician timeline is bananas, though.
Well, either Head or Monkey, one of the two left the band for a while, a fairly significant while, and then came back. I think it was Head who left.
Yeah, he was 93 to 2005, and then 2013 to the present.
Yeah, so nice little 8-year break there. But anyways, I just thought it was interesting that, and I know we need to wrap this up here. A couple other just quick things I'll mention.
Well, no, hang on a second.
Oh,
I'm
okay. You
not
got.
done with Korn yet.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. No,
So
go
Korn,
ahead.
I'm not looking forward to the Korn record. I'll listen to it. They're a band that's been weird for me though, because when they first came out, I listened to their first record and I liked it, but I kind of gave it the side eye. Like I wasn't quite sure. I didn't like the way that okay, we spell corn with a K and sometimes the R is backwards. It was just too gimmicky for me. But the music was so good that it was it was just undeniable. And then Life is Peachy came out and I was like, okay, yeah, this one's not that good. It's fine. I was right. This band is nothing. And then Follow the Leader and
Follow the leader.
Issues and Untouchables came out, and
Untouchables. That's the one I was thinking of.
I was all in on those three before I fell off, and I didn't listen to much Korn at all after that. This is a band that is a fleeting moment of my life. Like I could still go back and listen to some of those songs, and if they're playing on the quote unquote radio or whatever, I won't turn them off. But I'm not,
Yeah.
Just
listen to that.
not looking
I'll tell you
forward to them
what.
that much.
If you go back and listen to their first album with headphones on, though, that album still sounds amazing. Ross
Does.
Robinson crushed that in terms of production.
He was the it producer for a while.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. You have anything else to add about Korn? Or we?
No,
Okay.
I did enough.
Okay.
But let's hit the speed round for the rest of them.
Yeah, I just want to talk about the fact that we have Shins, The Strokes, and Franz Ferdinand all releasing albums this year. Like,
what
it's
year
kind of
is it, man?
exactly like I was that like just seeing those names all together on this list. I was like, whoa, like we are right back in the 2000s. Like, I don't know how excited I am for any of them. I saw Franz Ferdinand this summer last summer. I don't know, one of these summers. And they put on a great show. They were a lot of fun. But I don't know that I need new Franz Ferdinand music. The Shins haven't done anything that's really caught my attention in a very, very long time. The Strokes.
They're a nostalgia act now. I hate to say it.
Yep. The Strokes I love, but like again, how confident am I in a new Strokes album in 2025? I don't know.
The Strokes were part of the bands that I just didn't care that much about, even in the moment. I never listened to any of that stuff.
Yeah. So.
All right. So you also had one that I'm moderately excited for, a band that you and I have talked about a lot over the years, is Greet Death. A little band.
Yeah. Good call. I almost forgot
the fabled
about them.
show that got canceled for COVID.
Yeah.
You and I were supposed to see Deafheaven with Greet Death opening, and that tour never happened.
Maybe they can redo that tour if they both have albums coming out this year. Maybe that'd
be awesome.
Revive that tour. That would be awesome.
And that's a great lineup too, because those bands aren't really that much alike in terms sonically.
Yeah. Yes, correct.
Michigander, another Manchester Orchestra opener. It's kind of a one-man project.
Yeah.
It's maybe a little poppier, a little bit more introspective than your average indie rock.
I liked seeing him live more than I like listening to his recorded stuff. I thought so we saw him open for Manchester Orchestra, and I thought he was great. Like,
yeah, he was.
He was engaging. He sounded good. He played good. He got.
And he was with a 3 or a 4-piece band.
Yeah. I keep saying he, but his band was quite good. I thought it was really good. I knew nothing about him prior to that show going into it, and they at least won me over enough that like I pay attention to when they put new stuff out, and I've gone back and given them some listens.
Yeah. All right. Anything else? Had to go ahead. If you had to bet on a surprise record that we're not expecting, it's not going to be Pearl Jam. And we had to get the mention in for the Pearl Jam drinking game.
So I would actually say, I don't know how much of a surprise this is, like critically or to the masses, but for me, it would be interesting surprise that I could see it happening would be Alice in Chains having an album out this year.
It's been quiet.
It's been very quiet, but like Jerry is still pretty active, and I feel like in his restlessness, he might have something cooking beneath the surface that we'll see this year. So how about you? You have anything?
It's hard to think of, because Tool was
If you
working
knew
on
it, it
stuff.
wouldn't be. If you knew it, it wouldn't be a surprise.
Yeah, and I know Tool was working on stuff, but they're so notoriously slow. I can't bet on that. I'd be shocked if anything came out from them. And then, I mean, honestly, it's really fun for us to be in our fees and have been listening to music this long, because I'm still continually discovering new bands. And so I get surprised by stuff that I didn't even know existed. You know, it's like at the end of this past year, I discovered a couple records that, you know, more of the emo records that I tend to gravitate toward that came out in 23. And all of a sudden it's like brand new band. Here we go.
I think, you know, thematically, like looking at this list, no matter how good Deafheaven, Queens of the Stone Age, Turnstile, Scowl, like the Deftones, I can't remember if I said Deftones, no matter how good or great those albums were, if this list is all that came out in 2025, this would be such a letdown year compared to 2024. So I think you're right in that what's going to make or break 2025 as a year comparatively to 2024 is going to be a lot of what do we discover in 2025. Whether it be unannounced things from bands we already know who surprise release albums, or just new artists, or even old artists that we just haven't discovered yet. That's sort of the exciting part. And I don't have a good feel. Like, I'm not sitting here making any kind of prognosis of what I think 2025 is going to sound like, because I think that's all pretty subjective and relative to what you choose to listen to. You could make it sound like anything you want to.
Well, I always feel like that's retconned, you know. Yeah. After it's all over, everybody goes back and says, well, this was the defining thing.
Yeah. No, that's spot on. So anyways, I
came up with a surprise.
Oh, okay.
If Mansions releases something. Because their last one was an utter shock to me when it came out.
Yeah. Okay.
And one of my favorite bands that, you know, they're at a stage of their career where they might up and decide to stop doing music at some point, you know. They're real part-timers at this point. They haven't toured properly in years. So
yeah. Okay.
Anyway.
Yeah. So I'm excited for 2025. I just don't know, you know, like there's not a ton of things on this list that like is like, oh my God, this is going to be a loaded year. You know what I mean? I don't know if you feel the same way, but I
certainly didn't see 2024 coming in the way that it came in terms of being exciting.
We thought through 5 months, we thought it was a bit of a slow year. I remember us talking about that, you know.
For sure.
So
and then Knocked Loose kind of happened, and it honestly it knocked loose the rest of the backlog for the rest of the year. I felt like.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Well, we appreciate everybody being here. We appreciate all those of you who listened in 2024. We appreciate the brand new people who came on for 2025, and we're excited to keep this going. 2025 is going to have a lot of 30-year anniversaries from 1995. So look out for those. Please find us in all the places. We're at albumofrecord.com. We're on YouTube. We're on Facebook, Instagram, all those good places. Share it. Tell a friend about it. We appreciate you so much, and we'll talk to you next time. It's been the Album of Record podcast.